So, are we dreaming? It's a strange question. It feels like something a teenager would ask late at night, staring at the ceiling, or something from a movie. But it's a real question. It's one of the oldest and stickiest questions we have. And the short answer is unsettling. We can't prove we're not. Not with 100% airtight, absolute certainty. That probably sounds wrong. Of course this is real. I'm typing this. You're reading it. You can feel the chair you're sitting on. You can hear the hum of a fan or traffic outside. You can look at your hands, wiggle your fingers. They look like your hands. They feel like your hands. Dreams are fuzzy and weird. This is solid and clear. Case closed, right? Not quite. I've had dreams that felt just as real. Dreams where I felt the rough texture of a brick wall or the warmth of the sun on my face. Or dreams where I had conversations that made perfect sense at the time. Dreams with a story, a past, and a future. In the middle of those dreams, I didn't know I was dreaming. I was just living. The thought that it might be a dream never even came up. It was only when I woke up, lying in my bed with the morning light coming through the window, that I realized it was all a fabrication. So, the fact that this moment feels real isn't proof. The dream feels real until you wake up. What if this is just a very long, very detailed, very consistent dream, and the moment of death is just us finally waking up? This isn't a new idea. A long time ago in China, there was a philosopher named Zhuangzi. He wrote about a dream he had. In the dream, he was a butterfly. He was fluttering around from flower to flower, completely happy. He had no idea he was a man named Zhuangzi. He was just a butterfly, being a butterfly. Then he woke up. He was lying there, and he was himself again. But the dream had shaken him. He started to wonder, was he Zhuangzi who had just dreamed he was a butterfly? Or was he a butterfly right now, dreaming that he was a man named Zhuangzi? He couldn't be sure. And that's the whole point. Once the idea is in your head, it's hard to get it out. The dream felt completely real. The waking world felt completely real. How could he prove which was which? How do you use the tools from inside one reality to test if that reality is the true one? It's like trying to see your own eyeball without a mirror. You're stuck inside the system you're trying to examine. This idea terrified another philosopher, a Frenchman named René Descartes, a few thousand years later. He wanted to build a system of knowledge that was absolutely certain. He wanted a foundation that couldn't be shaken. So he decided to do something radical. He decided to doubt everything. Everything he could possibly doubt he would throw out, at least for a while. He started with his senses. He couldn't trust his eyes because they could be tricked by optical illusions. He couldn't trust his ears. He couldn't trust his sense of touch. He knew that sometimes when he was dreaming, he saw, heard, and felt things that weren't there. So his senses were out. They could be lying to him. What about his reason? Math, for example. 2 plus 2 equals 4. That seems certain, right? It's true whether you're awake or asleep. But Descartes pushed further. He imagined a powerful, malicious demon, a being whose entire purpose was to deceive him. This demon could be feeding him all his thoughts, all his sensations. This demon could be tricking him into thinking that 2 plus 2 equals 4 when it really equals 5. It's an extreme idea, but he was looking for absolute certainty. If it was possible to doubt it, even in a far-fetched scenario, it had to go. So he was left with nothing, his body, the world, other people, even logic. It could all be a massive, elaborate dream created by this evil demon. He felt like he was in quicksand. There was nothing solid to stand on, but then he found it. One little piece of solid ground. He realized that even if he was being deceived, even if everything was a dream, there was one thing he couldn't doubt. He was doubting. He was thinking. To be deceived, you have to exist. To dream, there must be a dreamer. A thought must have a thinker. And that was his famous conclusion, I think, therefore I am. He couldn't be sure he had a body. He couldn't be sure the world existed. But he could be sure that he, as a thinking thing, existed. That was his starting point, his one piece of proof. But notice what that proves. It only proves that a mind exists. It doesn't prove that the world around you is real. It doesn't prove you're not dreaming. You could be a brain in a vat, hooked up to a supercomputer that's feeding you this entire experience. Or you could just be a mind, a consciousness, dreaming up this whole universe. Descartes' proof doesn't get you out of the dream. It just tells you there's a dreamer, so let's try a more practical approach. What are the differences between waking life and dreams? And we can probably list a few. One is consistency. Waking life follows rules. The laws of physics are pretty reliable. If I drop my keys, they fall down. They don't float up to the ceiling. They don't turn into a fish. I can't suddenly fly or walk through walls. Dreams, on the other hand, are chaotic. The rules change without warning. I can be in my childhood home 1 minute and on the moon the next. The inconsistency is a hallmark of a dream. But is that proof? Think about it. A dream is created by your mind. Your mind is disorganized, especially when you're sleeping. It's pulling random memories, fears, and desires together into a messy narrative. But what if the dream wasn't being created by your single sleepy brain? What if it was being created by something much more powerful and organized? A supercomputer, for example. A computer could create a simulated world with perfectly consistent rules. The physics in that world would be just as reliable as our physics. Dropping your keys would have the same result every single time. The consistency of our reality doesn't prove it's the real one. It just proves that its rules are stable. Another test is continuity. My life has a continuous narrative. I remember yesterday. I remember last week, last year. I have a past that seems to lead in a straight line to this very moment. My memories feel connected. Dreams are often fragmented. I just appear in a situation with no memory of how I got there. When I wake up, the dream's narrative is gone, but memory is a funny thing. It's not a perfect recording. We misremember things all the time. We create false memories. We forget huge chunks of our lives. Police know that eyewitness testimony is famously unreliable, so our waking memory isn't a flawless record of a continuous reality. And in a dream, you often have a false sense of continuity. While you're in the dream, it feels like you know why you're there. You have a backstory that makes sense within the dream's logic. That sense of a past is just part of the dream itself. So what if your memories of yesterday and last year are just part of this dream? They were implanted in your mind the moment this waking experience began. You can't use your memory to prove that your memories are real. That's circular logic, okay? What about other people? This is a big one. I can't be the only one here. I can talk to you. You can tell me that you're real, that you're also experiencing this world. We share a reality. I can't read your mind, and you can't read mine. We are separate conscious beings. In a dream, all the other people are just projections of my own mind. They are dream characters. They don't have their own independent thoughts. This is probably the most comforting argument. The existence of others seems to anchor us in a shared, objective reality, but it's not proof either. How do you know that I'm not just a very convincing dream character, a philosophical zombie? I can tell you I'm real. I can write complex arguments and express deep emotions. But I would, wouldn't I? If this was your dream, your mind would create characters who are convincing enough to make the dream feel real. You are the only person whose consciousness you can be absolutely sure of. The idea that you're the only mind that exists is called solipsism. It's a lonely and terrifying thought, and it's very hard to disprove. Maybe all of us are in the same dream, a shared dream. That would explain why we can all see the same tree and agree that it's a tree. But that just pushes the question back one step. Who is dreaming this shared dream? And what is the reality that dreamer will wake up to? Let's try something simpler. It's physical sensation, pain. In the movie Inception, the characters use a totem to tell if they're in a dream. But their main tool is pain. They say a sharp kick of pain can wake you up. We have this idea that you can't really feel pain in a dream. If you get hurt, you just wake up. But that's not really true. You can feel pain in dreams. You can feel fear, joy, sadness, and love. The emotions and sensations can be incredibly powerful. Sometimes the physical feeling of falling in a dream is what wakes you up, but you still feel it. So pain isn't a reliable test. A sufficiently powerful dream could replicate the sensation of pain perfectly. And if this world is a dream, then all the pain you've ever felt has been dream pain. The fact that it hurts doesn't make it real. It just makes it a painful dream. There are also those little dream signs people talk about. Like, you can't read text in a dream. If you look at a clock, look away, and look back, the time will be different. Or you can't control a light switch. These are interesting quirks of our sleeping brain. It seems the part of our brain responsible for processing language and stable symbols isn't very active during sleep. So you could try it. Look at a sentence, look away, and look back. It will probably be the same. This might give you some confidence, but this is the weakest proof of all. It only proves that this state of consciousness, the one we call waking, has different properties than the state of consciousness we call dreaming. It doesn't prove that this state is the fundamental base reality. A more advanced dream or simulation wouldn't have to have these little glitches. The creator of the dream could easily program in stable text and working light switches. Relying on these tricks is like saying a video game isn't real because characters sometimes clip through walls. A better programmed game wouldn't have those bugs, but it would still be a game. This brings us to the modern version of the dream argument, the simulation hypothesis. This is the idea that we are living in a computer simulation. It's Zhuangzi's butterfly dream for the digital age. The argument, put forward by philosopher Nick Bostrom, goes something like this. Assume that consciousness is not tied to a biological brain. Assume it can be replicated on a powerful enough computer. Now think about the future. If humanity survives and continues to advance technologically, we will likely create incredibly powerful computers. What would we do with those computers? We would probably run simulations. We would simulate our ancestors. We would create virtual worlds, like the ones in our video games, but infinitely more detailed and realistic. The people inside these simulations would be conscious. They would have memories, thoughts, and feelings. They would believe their world is real. They wouldn't know they were living on a massive hard drive somewhere. Now, think about the numbers. There would be only one base reality where the computers are running. But inside that reality, people could run billions or trillions of simulations, and maybe the simulated people, once their civilization advances enough, could run their own simulations. You could have simulations within simulations. If that's the case, then a simple matter of probability suggests that we are more likely to be in one of the countless simulations than in the one and only base reality. The simulation hypothesis is basically the dream argument with a technological flavor. The dreamer is a computer program. The evil demon is the programmer. The rules of our world, the laws of physics, are just lines of code. It's a chilling idea, and just like the dream argument, it's almost impossible to disprove from the inside. Any evidence we find for our reality could just be part of the simulation's code. If we discover the fundamental particles of the universe, maybe we're just seeing the pixels of our world. So we're back where we started. Logic, science, and personal experience can't seem to give us a definitive answer. We are trapped inside our own consciousness, and there's no way to peek outside to see if there's anything else there. This can be a deeply disturbing thought. If this is all a dream, does anything matter? Does my life have any meaning? If other people are just projections, why should I be kind to them? If my suffering isn't real, why should I try to avoid it? If my achievements aren't real, why should I strive for anything? The question can lead to a kind of paralysis, a feeling that everything is pointless. But maybe that's the wrong way to look at it. Maybe we need to shift the question. Instead of asking, can we prove this is real? We should ask, does it matter if we can't? Let's assume for a moment that this is a dream. Or a simulation. What should you do? You still have to make choices. You are still experiencing this reality. The pain you feel, the joy you feel still feels good. The love you feel for your family and friends still feels like the most important thing in the world. Does a beautiful piece of music become less beautiful if it's being played inside a dream? Does a kind act become less kind? The experience itself is what's real to you. Consciousness is the stage where all of this plays out, and your conscious experience is undeniable. You are experiencing something. This is a pragmatic approach. It's a bet. I cannot know for certain that the world is real, but I'm going to bet that it is. I'm going to act as if it is. Why? Because the alternative is to live in a state of constant doubt and inaction. And I have to live a life. And this is the only one I'm aware of. I'm going to treat the people around me as if they are real conscious beings. Because it makes for a better world to live in. It creates trust and love and community. Living as a solipsist would be an incredibly lonely existence, and maybe, just maybe, my assumption that others are real is the right one. I'm going to treat my choices as if they matter, because they have consequences that I can see and feel. My actions affect myself and others. That seems meaningful enough, regardless of the ultimate nature of reality. If I help someone who is suffering, their suffering is reduced. That is a real effect in the only reality I know. In a way, this uncertainty can be liberating. It can break our rigid attachment to our own beliefs and our own importance. If we can't even be sure that the ground beneath our feet is real, then maybe we should hold our opinions a little more lightly. Maybe we should be more open to other perspectives. It can foster a sense of humility and wonder. The world becomes a more mysterious and fascinating place. It also puts the focus on what truly matters experience. If all we can be sure of is our own consciousness, then the quality of that consciousness is paramount. The goal isn't necessarily to accumulate possessions or status in a world that might be an illusion. The goal is to experience things like love, compassion, curiosity, and joy. These are states of consciousness. And they are real in and of themselves. You don't need an external objective reality to validate them. Your experience of joy is real joy. So, can we prove we're not living in a dream? No. There will always be that sliver of doubt, that question Zhuangzi asked so long ago. We are locked inside our own minds and there is no escape. We have no external reference point to judge our own reality. Any test we devise is part of the system we are testing, but we can live. We can choose to engage with this reality, whatever it is, with our whole hearts. We can choose to believe in the reality of others, to act with kindness and integrity. We can find meaning not in some external validation of our world, but in the internal richness of our own experience. The floor feels solid under my feet. The coffee I'm drinking is warm and bitter. I hear the sound of a bird outside my window. I have memories of people I love and plans for the day ahead. Is this a dream? I can't be absolutely sure, but it's my dream, and I have to decide what to do with it. And for now, I'm going to treat it as if it's the realest thing in the universe. Because my experience of it is real, and maybe that's the only kind of proof that ever really mattered anyway.